Hello, everybody, and welcome to our workshop called From Launch to Scale, Building Knowledge Bases that Scale with Your Product. I'm Maya, founding engineer at 14AI.
I am Nivedha, CEO and co-founder at Pageloop.
And I'm Michael, I'm co-founder at 14AI.
And we're really excited to have you all here and really excited to have Nivedha as our guest. If you want to introduce yourself a little bit, maybe say a couple words about Pageloop, and then we can dive into our discussion.
Sure. Thank you again for having me back here. We're building Pageloop that helps product companies maintain their knowledge bases. We all know that today knowledge bases are not just used by humans, but are actually used by AI. So if you're using things like Intercomfin or Zendesk, and you're using AI for customer support, definitely check out Pageloop.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we're going to learn a lot more during our discussion.
I hope.
Great. And of course, if anybody has any questions in the audience, feel free to share those questions. And before we continue, we want to say hello to our audience and we want to ask you where you're calling from and what your favorite sport is. So we're here live in San Francisco, and what's your favorite sport?
Wow, I think growing up in India, I've watched a lot of cricket. I've also played a lot of cricket. So I'd say definitely my favorite sport in that sense is cricket to watch. But I love playing pickleball, badminton. I think super fun sports. Yeah. What about you?
I would say tennis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So pickleball is the new tennis.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
I'm like,
People, yeah, I know. Oh my God. Tennis players hate when people say that. So, but
pickleball is fun.
Yeah,
but
it is fun.
Me is tennis as well.
Okay. Oh no.
And we have in the audience, Maria, we're looking forward as well. And Ugo, SF tennis, amazing. So
wow, so we have a big tennis group here.
We do.
Okay.
Awesome. Kath, welcome. Philippines badminton. Yeah, another kind of tennis-like game. So we're going to get started with our discussion. And as I said, feel free to add the questions in the chat and we're going to get to them as well. But we'd like to start with our first question was kind of about early stages, the early stages of support, the early stages of a company. How can a knowledge base serve as a connective tissue between all maybe different parts of a team? And how does it really function to, unite a team in terms of knowledge and documentation?
Yeah, I think knowledge bases have always been that glue. And I think it's become even more important in an early stage team, given how fast we're building. And it can easily run into situations where we are in silos and we're not really communicating with each other. And the only way to make sure is all of us are contributing to docs. So I can tell you how we do this at Pageloop. All of us are supposed to write docs. Engineers, when they push out new features or update existing features, they have to update the docs. Again, they use Pageloop for doing all of that. But that said, it, I think, helps in one, avoiding silos, but also two, you don't have to sit and answer repeated questions from others who don't know about the features you're building. They can always go look up the knowledge base and understand it for themselves. I think the unique part about why we do this at our team also, and maybe this is something that people can take away respectively for your own teams, is we build empathy for our users by seeing how difficult it is to do that, but also how important it is to do that. So I'd say it's very important when we are moving really fast to not lose track of what's happening and to not just completely become siloed in our own worlds. Yeah.
I'm curious to hear, now that things are changing really rapidly, we're talking about access to knowledge from agents, SEO, and so on. How much are you writing this for humans versus for agents? When your team is tasked with updating docs, for instance, have you changed some of the patterns in order to make sure that that you have a new audience?
Oh my God, yes, big time. I think what previously used to be like documentation was written primarily, oh, now that we've scaled past series A, series B, now we have to like focus on docs. That's no longer the case because LLMs are constantly crawling and they pick up context from documentation, especially text. So it has become much more important. And to answer your question directly, we actually write it more for agents than for humans. But also there is a good overlap there. LLMs were trained on human data. So it's not like you're writing it in like a gibberish format that humans can't understand. At the same time, you're also making sure that, the headings, subheadings, adding categories, those are like done much more thoughtfully and carefully because agents are going to be using that information.
So can you dig a bit deeper into
Yeah.
the overlap and the non-overlap?
Yes. So the overlap definitely is that even as a human, when you read a document, it's very easy to read it when you have clear headings and subheadings and numbered points in your documentation. Even things like when you have a screenshot, you have alt text underneath, which makes it more accessible and easy. Now the overlap there is LLMs actually are able to figure out or search or surface your documentation much more easily and much more accurately if you have those in place, like your headings, subheadings, especially things like alt text added to your images. And at the same time, there are like things that are very specific to agents. Like, for example, if you've heard of the concept of llms.txt, which I think Anthropic brought in and then Mintlify made it a lot more popular. That is a very specific format in which your docs can be converted into that format, which are then much more easily digestible for agents.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And yeah, talking more about kind of balancing, docs for agents and humans. Could you talk a little bit more about how, different types of visuals like GIFs, screenshots play in article quality and where we're heading there and how you think about that?
Yeah. So LLMs have gotten, like, if you just look at the word LLMs, it's large language models and language in the sense of text. So initially, I think when we saw like GPT-3, 3.54 come out, they actually didn't do very well with images. But today, say for, from GPT-5, they actually do really well with images like screenshots, but they still don't do well with GIFs and videos. I think videos, there are much more separate specialized models that do that well. But when it comes to think about why GIFs became popular, people didn't want to write about how to do a particular workflow, and the shortcut they found to replacing that was GIFs. But imagine a knowledge base article that has like tons of GIFs but literally no explanation in text format about what that is, and you're feeding this to an LLM or an agent. That information is completely lost because the agent cannot read a GIF. It cannot read a GIF as well as it actually can read the text about a GIF. So it's very critical. So even if maybe for your user base, they very, very much prefer GIFs, so add it. But be mindful that it is a big overhead to maintain. So if something changes in your product, you have to make sure that you're going and updating those GIFs. But two, that you're also expanding the what's happening in the GIF in text format, so that when humans read it, they look at the GIF, they're probably going to ignore the text. But when you feed that same thing into an LLM, they are, relying more on the text. So that is very, very, critical to do. So I would not skip the effort or replace GIFs for, writing documentation. Yeah.
So yeah, in that regard, there's these new embedding models which are multimodal, right, and are capable of ingesting these kinds of formats.
Yeah.
Do you see like a performance degradation here? Because
oh my God,
the goal is that I think
yeah,
hopefully in shortly we'll start being able to have the LLMs ingest videos and GIFs as well, right?
Absolutely. I think it all actually, that's a very, very good follow, because context window is such a precious limited resource with LLMs, where say if you're using something like GPT or Claude, they typically have like 200K tokens. Now with text, you're using much less tokens, but if you're going to start feeding in, say, screenshots or GIFs, those are going to immediately fill up your context window, and you're probably crowding too much information there that is, not very usable, or is if especially you're doing like a bigger job or bigger task of like searching a very complex query. Say your customer, is looking up your knowledge base and asking a pretty complex query or a complex question. It needs to fit the most important details in the context window to serve the right answer. But if you're sending things like GIFs into the LLMs, it's going to quickly fill up that context window because they do use a lot more tokens. So that's, and so we will see this improve. So it's not like, it's not something we've seen that happen with every single thing. Each new model that comes out, it actually improves. But I can't say for certain that context window is going to jump from 200K to like 1 million. Like Gemini has it, but also Gemini doesn't do that well in some of the things that maybe GPT-5 does, or Claude does. So
Grok 4 is out.
Or Grok 4, yeah,
2 million tokens.
Exactly.
Fast. So I think things are moving fast.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, it's super interesting to dive into all.
Yeah, maybe I have a quick follow-up question in that regard, because we're talking, I think, more and more about, is RAG about to be a thing of the past, right? Because indeed, like 2 million tokens is a lot. You can fit in a lot of things, and if the models are fast and are capable of, finding the needle in a haystack in 2 million tokens, how much should we actually still invest in RAG? And by RAG, I don't just mean like the RAG system, but it also reflects in the way we author our docs, because RAG kind of wants you to structure your docs in a nice way. Formatting, like sections, means you can like extract each sections and create like embeddings from them. But do we really need to care that much? Where do you see this thing going?
Yeah. Good question. I think it's still a open debate of sorts. I don't think there's anything conclusive that I can say yet. Maybe the next time we chat, there'll be more to say about this. But what I will say is, when we've written docs for humans, we've always wanted to write it concise, because we're like, they don't have that much, attention to sit and read like, massive like paragraphs. So you don't really have to edit way too much. You can actually add as much information about that feature on your documentation without needing to think about, will a human actually sit and read this much? Because humans are probably not going to be sitting and reading docs. They're actually going to ask an LLM. So you can very freely start adding a lot more context. And I think even at the stage where it's not just about feeding a lot of information, it's also about, if I feed a lot of information, and if I'm not really worried about formatting and creating specific sections, I do have to build other systems that will ensure that I'm still able to pull the right, context or the most relevant answer out of all of those hundreds and hundreds of documents that I've probably written about my product. So I think there will still be a version of RAG, in my personal opinion, whether it's RAG or whatever else we call it, because the one thing we don't want to ever run into is when somebody asks a question where the answer is coming from a knowledge base, that we are, giving them a muddled, long answer without actually getting to the point. So the getting to the point is exactly what customers want, and that can never be, replaced for something else. So whether it's RAG or another system, doesn't matter. But that still needs to happen extremely efficiently. But yes, you're right. We don't have to worry about writing, smaller docs. We can actually write a lot of information in docs today.
I would say the counterpart here is basically a matter of like extending the budget. And I think if we have a little more budget, like, yes, RAG allows us to hone in on the right information, but by honing in, we might miss that little piece that was like somewhat like ambiguous somewhere else, but that part was required, but the RAG system was just, not capable of, doing a proper like similarity search. And so I feel like extending the budget could iron out some of these issues, right?
Absolutely.
Anyways, I think it's still open, but yeah, it's going in the direction of basically like improving everything for everyone. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have a couple of questions from the audience. So our first one is, what is your opinion on self-improving knowledge bases with knowledge created automatically by the LLMs?
I mean, I think that's what's happening today. Whether you're using, something like ChatGPT or Gemini to write your docs. I remember before I started Pageloop, and when the first time custom GPT came out, one of the most exciting parts for me back then was, oh, I can actually like feed all my existing docs and I can make it write new docs, for new topics, and it'll have all the context. And so we've built Pageloop also in a very similar direction, and people use Gemini, Notebook LM, those kind of things to already write. So that happens at the same time. I would say that without a human in the loop reviewing the content, I don't think we're still at that stage where you can just have the LLM like automatically write things. It's almost like, think about folks in the audience who probably use or you folks who use things like Claude Code or Cursor. You spend a lot of time in plan mode, like trying to understand how it's actually going to execute a particular task, and that's because that is a very, very critical foundation after which you probably are quite certain that it's going to get the code right. So in the same way, when you're using LLMs to actually write documentation, I think it's still very, very important for humans to be reviewing it. But the review part is much faster. The writing part is what is quite time consuming. So I'd say we're not there yet where you can automatically write all docs. It's a great future, but it'll happen. It'll happen at some point.
Thank you. And we have another question. So in what ways do image captioning help with image understanding? And are there cases where passing the LLM itself can be an—
Oh, I love this question. So I think image is still, because of multimodality now in almost all LLMs, I think they will be able to understand images really well. At the same time, it is difficult for an LLM to always very accurately describe or understand what an image does if you're just passing, say, a bunch of images without any other context. So in that case, I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but writing alt text meant like a single sentence, but today you want to actually write a much more detailed alt text, and that also can be generated through LLMs. So that is pretty critical even today, I'd say. It's not a substitute. You can still feed images singularly, but it will do far better and be far more accurate if you're coupling that with a good detailed alt text or image caption.
By the way, just for a quick anecdote, this works for other kinds of content as well.
Okay.
Very nicely, like a code block, for instance. Instead of just feeding the code block, when you ingest the documentation, have the LLM generate a little description of what this code block does, and then you can easily like bring out like this code example when a question comes in. So this is a technique that is quite similar in that regard.
Interesting. Yeah. Thank you. That definitely makes sense. Great questions. Thank you. Please keep them coming.
Yeah, please keep them coming. We'll make sure to answer them. So yeah, switching gears a little bit, beyond helping customers, how can knowledge bases be leveraged for better onboarding and, keeping internal teams aligned as a company grows?
Yeah, I think any of us who've been working for some time, especially the pre-LLM era, we all know that when someone new joins our team, the one thing that happens very frequently is we have to answer tons and tons of questions about, oh, how does this work? Or, what does this feature do? Oh, like, can I actually do this? And it is, quite a lot of context switch dip in productivity that constantly happens. And it can get pretty frustrating both to people who are training as well as people who are learning, because they have to literally wait for someone to tell them, how something works. So I'd say that has completely transformed how new employee onboarding is being done today. Training teams, even in the past, were using knowledge bases to craft their training documents. Even more so today. In the past, I do remember working with L&D teams, and they'd be like, hey, I saw this in the knowledge base, but I'm pretty sure this is not a feature that we have any longer, or I'm pretty sure that this actually works much more differently than what this document says. So today, with using LLMs to actually keep your knowledge updated and creating new knowledge, as it's become much faster, training and development teams have made it a priority to use that as a primary source to write really good training docs, which overall reduces the onboarding time significantly, reduces the effort of existing experienced senior employees in the team having to constantly context switch to answer little questions. And in fact, you can those folks can put a lot more energy in getting to know the new person, rather than just interacting with them on, oh, like, I'm going to answer this question that they ask on Slack. So I'd say in that sense it has become much more important. And by the way, I'm not just talking about external documentation, this also goes for internal documentation. So using LLMs, like use something like Whisperflow, just talk into a mic and let it write an entire document for you, so you don't even actually have to put too much effort in writing those internal docs, which actually will significantly reduce, and you also get to put your name on it. So why not?
So yeah, I mean, obviously, like a good knowledge base, good documentation sends a very strong signal as a company that cares not just about like the surface of things, but the entire like engine, right? A few companies like Stripe, for instance, they've been known for the care they put in every little aspect of what they do, and in particular the docs. I'm curious, do you have some examples of other companies who have just really managed to make docs like a core part of the team's effort, and this then translates into a high quality team and product?
I'd say the first shift I'm seeing there is that, like I said, startups always saw docs as a second order thing, where, oh, when we grow, then we will focus on docs. That's one shift I'm seeing already, where they're actually focusing a lot more on writing docs from the time they've launched. So even if they have zero customers, it presents themselves as a company or a team that's like very mature and polished. So that's one. And of course, they also get discovered on LLMs, because customers' buying patterns are also slowly changing, where they go into like a Perplexity or a ChatGPT and ask, oh, what are the agentic support tools, and 14.ai shows up there as an example, because you've written docs that are publicly available, for example. Now, second, I think, is teams. Like I've seen teams like Slack do a phenomenal job even today in maintaining their documentation. And from what I've heard in their customer teams, they've actually made this a huge priority to ensure everyone or most people on the team actually contribute to docs. And contributing to docs doesn't just mean like writing them, but also means to identifying gaps, looking at support tickets. Again, use AI for this, like looking at support tickets and being like, hey, there's a pattern here where we constantly get this one question from customers that we can very easily add to our docs, or paying attention to docs and seeing that, oh, this actually looks incorrect, so we need to update this. So there are multiple ways in which you can contribute to that. Always, it's like a living resource. You don't, it's not a one time and done kind of job. So I'd say Slack is a really fantastic example of that. I've also seen the teams at Zapier do a phenomenal job. I used to work there, and we had this as a core part of our role as a support person. I did have to spend 3 to 5 hours a week actually sitting and figuring out what new docs to write. So yeah,
I want to dig. There's a question I really want to know more about. So when this happens well, as you said, in Slack or Zapier or Stripe, do you have a sense of the team constellation to make that work? And what I want to know is that you have CPO, CTO, CFO. You don't have CDOs, like chief docs officers. And it's often the thing that within a team, everyone is supposed to be contributing to the docs. Like the buyer is not clear who is buying a doc solution. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
Who, in your opinion, should be leading the effort, if any? Do you see more success when it's the support teams, or is it more like the product teams? Have you seen some patterns emerge in terms of who is like leading the efforts here?
Absolutely. I think docs has always struggled to find its home in a consistent place. And yeah, I think today there's a better reason for that, because I've seen docs teams actually sit inside growth teams.
Okay.
Because they want to be super close as and when things are getting released. They actually want docs to be fully updated before the feature even comes out. But what I am seeing is, I think the most obvious one is support teams, because they use tools like, 14AI or Intercomfin or Zendesk, and they use like chatbots, and they have a very direct impact on docs being updated. And if they are not, the intensity of the volume going up in their support is very, very high. So there's a big pricing change that has come out that you've announced, and your docs are not updated, and customers are going and asking your chatbot, hey, what about this new pricing plan? And it's spitting out what's the old doc information that's sitting currently in your docs. Imagine the slew of questions that will come into support and be passed to a human agent. It's the cost is very, very high of making an error like that. But the other side that I'm seeing is CEOs are very interested in making this they're thinking first principles, and they know that the role that docs play today is so significant that it's far beyond, say, things like, oh, I will use it for customer support, or I will use it for enablements, I'll use it for training new salespeople. They know that if they don't do this, their company or their product is not going to be visible to LLMs at all. In fact, one interesting pattern that we've noticed is teams who actually very regularly update their docs get caught in LLM like crawlers much more frequently. And because LLM crawlers see this as, oh, this source actually seems to get updated very frequently. So when they crawl and they see, oh, last updated was actually like 2 days ago, LLMs think that, oh, this is a more trusted resource. So anytime a customer is going to ask a question about this, the whole concept of GEO, which is generative engine optimization, like what SEO used to be, they actually surface your product and the information you've written on your blogs or your documentation as the most trusted source. So there is far-reaching impact that's happening today, and I'm seeing that a lot more CEOs are pushing the need for docs, which I've really never seen before. So I think that's one big shift that we're noticing.
Yeah.
Thank you. And our last question, looking ahead, what makes you most excited about the future of documentation and where things are going?
Yeah, I'd say that we are seeing a shift in how consumers and users are discovering new products, which is, previously we used to go to Google and ask, keyword search was such a big thing. Today they're asking LLMs for those questions. So there is a shift that's already happening over there. Two is we are writing more and more for agents and less for humans. But the good thing, thankfully, the way LLMs are today is that those documents are still very human friendly to read. So even if a human were to look at it, it's still human readable. And I'm also seeing that the need to heavily beautify your docs, which is something that teams spend an inordinate amount of time today with, like custom themes on your, on your documentation. Those needs are completely going away, which means teams are not having to sit in like heavily format, beautify, like add like custom CSS, which means you're actually going to spend your time and effort on more real, impactful things, which is what does this information do for my users rather than how beautiful is this going to look. So yeah, I'd say that is another shift. Final one, I think a lot of you might be able to relate to this is I've seen a lot of the best devs out there use things like Context 7 to pull the most recent documentation about all the libraries that they use, so that when you are using those libraries inside your Claude Code or Cursor, they actually are able to pull the most recent documentation. So it is a big problem that otherwise we used to constantly face all the time. Those are like big shifts in the way that we are relying on docs much more than we ever have before. So it's super exciting to see that we're focusing so much on knowledge and everyone being able to self-serve a lot faster. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is super fun.
Learned so much. And yeah, thanks so much for everybody in the audience. And of course, thank you, Nivedha. And for everybody interested, we have our next workshop next week. It's going to be about prompting. We have the link to the event in the chat as well. So if you want to sign up already, now's your chance. So we're going to have a recap on the blog about our wonderful discussion today as well. So once again, thank you so much, Nivedha. It was lovely to have you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.